Good evening. Of all the time bombs in the American economy set to explode with dire consequences, this is a big one. Staggering debt from student loans. Everyone is told a college education is a way to get ahead. College tuitions, though, keep going up. So does the borrowing. And we just hit an awful milestone. Our nation's combined student loan debt has now hit $1 trillion. That averages out to $24,000 per student. It's now larger than credit card debt in this country, and it comes just as an entire generation is just starting out. Today, the president...
An entire generation is now graduating with tens and thousands of dollars in student debt. The student debt is ruining their lives and is causing most of them to live abnormal lives that they never would have imagined living. The best way to understand the student debt crisis is to look at the past and see how student loans were created and how they have changed over the past few years. The start of student loans was in 1963 when the legislative branch created the Higher Education Facilities Act of 1963 and the Higher Education Act of 1965, which were both signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson. In 1965, the federal government started guaranteeing student loans that were provided by banks. But later, in 1990, student loans took a turn when the Federal Credit Reform Act was put into place by George Bush, which changed how loans were given out. Everyone taking out loans now had to pay enough to cover the cost of what the government put in. But the biggest hit came to student loans in 2010 when Barack Obama eliminated the Federal Family Education Loan Program, which now meant that all loans became direct loans instead of federal loans. So all the money was coming straight from the U.S. Department of Education or the U.S. Treasury. Lyndon B. Johnson originally created student loans as part of his Great Society. He believed that education was a way to advance the nation. In a quote by him, "Education is the path to achievement and fulfillment for the nation." But it now seems as though student loans are actually ruining our nation because student debt is having a ripple effect in our economy and even ruining some young people's lives. How exactly is student debt ruining young people's lives? Well, just this past year alone, 15% postponed getting married, 16% of graduates postponed having children, 22% moved back in with family, another 22% lived with a roommate as opposed to living alone, 29% delayed buying a home, 31% had to work another job, 40% delayed buying a car, and 41% delayed contributions to their retirement accounts. 75% had to make a personal or financial sacrifice because of their monthly student loan payments. Because of their student loans, they are unable to live a normal American life. I recently interviewed my father, Jeff Fitzpatrick. He used student loans to help pay for his higher education. He graduated college with about $20,000 worth of student debt. I asked him to tell me how his student debt affected his life.
Having to repay the student loans when I graduated from college meant that I had to move in with my mom because the job I had, I wasn't making very much money to start with, so I was stuck at home for several years before I could move out on my own.
This next clip from CNBC News shows how student debt is affecting other people's lives and how it is affecting our very own economy.
Homeownership for those under 35 has fallen sharply in the past 10 years. A recent survey by the National Association of Realtors found that 23% of first-time homebuyers said it was hard for them to save for a down payment. And more than half of them, 57% actually, said student debt was hurting their ability to save. Now, there are other ways that they're also delaying life milestones, delaying starting a family. The birth rate for women between 20 and 29 years old has been declining.
The effects that student debt is having on our community is pretty clear. It is affecting many people's home lives as well as our very own economy. Mitch Daniels, the president of Purdue University and former Republican governor of Indiana, states students are now postponing marriage, childbearing, and home purchases, and pretty evidently eliminating the percentage of young people who plan on starting a business. Every citizen and taxpayer should be extremely concerned about this. While it is true no one is being forced to take out student loans, it is, however, the best option for most people to pay for college. Currently, 75% of students who are attending college are using student loans to finance it. Some may even argue that a higher education might not be worth taking out student loans and causing student debt. But when looking at the facts, more and more companies are requiring a college degree as well as a high school degree. Even minor jobs such as secretaries now require a college degree. President Barack Obama recently discussed how he felt about the student debt crisis that is going on in America.
They've got significant debt. Now we know, all of you know, that in a 21st century economy, a higher education is the single best investment that you can make in yourselves and your future. And we've got to make sure that investment pays off.
The 2016 presidential candidates need to discuss the student debt crisis because if the crisis does not get resolved, we can see a major decrease in our economy and many people will have to live unhappy lives because of their student debt. If you agree with me and you think that the 2016 presidential candidates should be discussing the student debt crisis, please call your local congressman or congresswoman to express your concern about how student loans and student debt are having a terrible effect in our community. I really hope that we can see a change within the next few years in order to better the United States and our local communities.